Hey there everybody, it's Eternal Snowman here with another BLT recap and predictions video. So this one will be covering what happened in week 1, and then we'll be moving on to predictions for week 2. So first off, for this week we ended with 2 teams who won, 2 teams who lost, of course, and then the other 4 teams went and tied. So a lot of the teams that I believed were better, my top 3 teams, the Alakazams, uh, ourselves, and the Heatrans, um, all tied this week, which isn't that surprising considering that we matched up against like other top teams as well. So that's what happened. And then I'll go through some individual matchups where I felt that were interesting, and some players who impressed me and some players who didn't. So GXC versus LKA PKD. GXC, 100% GXC definitely won that very cleanly. Bad team selection, bad moveset selection, and didn't play especially well on LCAP's side, and GXC just took advantage of that. Chaitanya beat Tote very clean. Snowfall very clean as well. Arsenine versus Ninja Dog. I don't remember too much. I remember I don't remember that much about this game. But it does seem that Arsenine has seemed to pick up to be a decent player. Beating Ninja Dog is no easy feat, in my opinion. So the fact that he did pick up the win is important. Also proves that the Stuffles maybe had a better draft than I maybe initially thought. I remember this game was very one-sided, and this is a big upset. Um, um, I don't remember what Serene Grace brought actually. But and yeah, there wasn't really anyone who performed extremely well that I wasn't expecting. I guess Raj Dashu did have the big upset, and this matchup didn't tell me that much because of who they were facing. And the teams didn't really show me that they were top tier players per se. I thought that it was mediocre team selection at best. In this matchup, I don't think either of these players played very well. I don't think either of these players played very well. This match was very good. King of Crimea versus the Welshwell. So if you guys have time, I would recommend watching that. I don't think these guys played very well. Basically, mostly went as expected. Especially, I felt like there was none of the new players who weren't expected to play well. I thought played well at all. Like Pokeart, who I had like a question mark about. I was like, if can they play well? Can they not? And coming into it, I didn't know. Pokeart brought a terrible team, and it was just not good enough. And so like, of course, they lost the game because of bad team selection, and I just feel like that was a constant throughout a lot of the games, especially like that one was one I remembered, and the Ubers game in the first series, I remember it being pretty bad as well. So even and then the play didn't really especially impress me either. So none of the players really stood out to me. Unlike last year, there was some like standout players, even from the more unknown, I guess, players like Kather from last year, and Keeping It Icy, or like those guys who had less of a name recognition value from before, except for like TTT, who kind of like became, even though he didn't have any kind of experience coming into it, he does have outside kind of help, or like outside, how do you say it, like recognition. So it wasn't that much of a surprise that he managed to play pretty well in his match versus SMB as well. In our matches, Mysterious M versus Terracotta went very. Mysterious M did kind of make a choke, but he wasn't really punished for it, so it was fine. So he won that one. Dennis I think should have played much better. He had actually a decent matchup and could have won that game pretty easily if he played better. And I felt like that was a constant throughout all the games that we lost this week, which I am pretty sad about. Dennis didn't play very cleanly. Tom Bugan or Harley had a really hard choke where he had almost a guaranteed win. He played very well up until, or like not very well, but he played pretty cleanly up until the very end and had basically a 100% win and then threw it away for, I'm not too sure why. So that was kind of disappointing. Sifikon also had a pretty good matchup, and he had a good opportunity to win it versus Frisso, but he played it pretty poorly and made some pretty crucial misplays that lost him the game. And Cheese also made some pretty crucial misplays, but he also got kind of unlucky with the he got Ironhead flinched. And then Ronman won in a game where his opponent didn't play super cleanly, but nice team selection managed to pull out the win. Sanjay won cleanly, I won cleanly, and there wasn't that much to say about those three matches, or those two matches. It was just very one-sided, and picked up the win as we were expected to. Jaren beat Reggie. Honestly, I'm not too happy about this just because of how Jaren is prone to shit talking about whatever. So, it happens. But I think there was a crucial play where Reggie kind of over predicted and he lost his Pete onto a judgment where Jaren was just trying to get damage onto the Ferrothorn. And then he lost the game basically off that play because he was set so far behind. Not to say that Jaren was playing bad, but he was basically just in a bad position, and he took like a big risk after, and it didn't pay off for him. So, and then Maroon cleanly won this one, and this was a very clean game as well. This was a pretty clean game from Abyssal Ruins, and Carolina brought a no rocks team, so that was very interesting. And by very interesting, I mean I don't know what he was doing. Prince of All Tacos won pretty cleanly as well. And NU, Skip Can, I remember this being a pretty clean game from him as well. I remember it. One of the games, oh right, this NU game had Michelius brought a Regirock, which was extremely questionable. I just felt like the team selection throughout this entire week determined a lot of the matches because there was quite a few matches outside of our week, like where we actually had good matchups in almost every game. A lot of the other games were determined purely based on matchup, like the one player just brought a terrible team or the other player just like had a perfect answer to their like team or whatever, and the player who brought the better team won. And it's not really like two players brought good teams and they played against each other and they won or whatever, and the better player won or whatever, or the one who prepped better won, but more like one player just brought an unviable team. I don't want to say like it's I don't want to like shoot people down for doing this or like trying new ideas and stuff, but like it's more like there has to be a reason behind it. And a lot of times when you aren't like the most experienced or like don't have the most knowledge about certain tiers, it's best to just bring solid stuff, and then just try to outplay your opponent, because at like not like to like kind of like shoot anyone down, but BLT is obviously not the highest level of competition, and most of the players who are playing here, very few of them actually have achieved to the highest level in whatever tier they're playing. Like even I'm not, outside of Ubers, I'm not really like the highest tier player in the other tiers. But my point is that like it's easier to, for worse or lesser players to just not experiment very much and just bring solid stuff, because and try to like play better, because if you don't really understand why certain things work, it's harder for you to like kind of break the meta, if you will. And I felt that a lot throughout the games. Like the players who brought like less conventional stuff were generally punished for doing so because they didn't understand why it worked, or whatever. There were some people. Jack in My Box beat McCabe, and it was pretty clean too, or like solid. It wasn't like hacks or a huge amount of hacks or like purely matchup based. It was like he played solid. So that's someone I have kind of my eye on for the future. And then Havens versus London was, I think their team choice was kind of interesting, but it was a pretty solid match as well. So all in all, I think the Blastoises and the Stuffles really showed up this week as two teams that I didn't really have a lot of stock in coming into this tournament, but they both showed up to be pretty good. And it'll be interesting to see how their players will like perform moving forward because I think they did pick up a lot of those. I kind of talked about this in the previous segment where it's basically like a bunch of like decent players. There's not like that many star players, but there's not that many like terrible players. So it's going to be interesting to see where they kind of fall in the grand scheme of things because like they may play against teams with more star players but less like kind of solid players. So um, yeah, it will depend a lot about how they perform in the coming weeks. Um, that said, I've been pretty disappointed with BLT's quality as a whole. I think I'm going to try to encourage players to try to give it more time into both playing better, bring better teams and whatever. Because I feel like as it is right now, BLT has been kind of disappointing for me personally. Because I think a lot of times in the past few BLTs, there have been like people who have really like stepped up their game for BLT, and I think that this year for BLT, there's been a lot of one-sided matches. There's been a lot of kind of you know uh, stomps and whatnot. But I want more people to like. I want there to be upsets. I want there to be more of that kind of feeling of you know uh, younger or like newer players kind of like rising up in the scene, and that'll take a lot of work for and obviously more competitive matches because I felt like there weren't that many good like great quality matches this week. There was like Terracotta versus Mysterious M. There was the Welsh Wall versus King of Crimea, and then like Havens versus London, and it kind of just dropped off. There weren't that many like a ton of like fantastic matches to watch. So encourage everyone to kind of just have. I just want the BLT experience to be better for both everyone participating and the viewing experience as well. So with that said, I mean it's obviously the first week, so I don't expect every team to have already like figured everything out by this point. But moving forward, you only have 3 weeks for the group stage and then a couple weeks for the playoffs. So moving forward, it's going to be important for everyone to do well if you really want to be in contention for the BLT title. So that with that said, let's move into the week 2 predictions. So I'll talk about um, all the different players and matchups and just talk a little bit about what I believe. Now that I have a little bit more information, I'll also be able to kind of talk about what I believe. Each player, kind of where they fall. So, Plimsoil Punks versus Dan Demand. So, Dan Demand, or they both won their match last week. However, Plimsoil Punks won in PU. That said, I believe he is a much better player. Dan Demand had didn't play very cleanly at all in his matchup versus Pidgeot Mega. So I believe Plimsoll Punks will take this one pretty cleanly as well. I think it's going to about a 70-30 matchup right now. The X factor really is MJ's how good MJ can prep this week. But that said, I do think that like playing does become a factor at some point, and Plimsoll Punks is a better player in my opinion. So I believe this is 70-30. Tote versus Attribute. Attribute played relatively cleanly last week. He did manage to pick up his win. Tote lost to Chaitanya pretty cleanly as well. So I think Attribute will be a favorite coming into this match. I don't know how much Tote was going to innovate and how much team support Plaids and Raj.Shu are going to be providing. I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt and say that they may be trying to help their players a little bit more. So I'll keep this one at like a 60-40 or a 65-35 here. Snowfall versus Sam.tan or Sim. I can't pronounce that, but it's like Byakiju, something like that. Starts with a B. And I think Snowfall played very cleanly last week, and Sam.tan played pretty bad. He had a really good matchup and didn't manage to like win his match. And actually, I think he got 6-0'd. But he had a good matchup, so he should have won that match. So I'll say Snowfall will take this very cleanly, and I think this will be about an 80-20 matchup. Ars9 versus King of Crimea. King of Crimea really showed up, and Ars9 did as well. Although King of Crimea lost his match last week, I still have a lot of faith in him, and I believe this one will be probably one of the best matches of the week. I'll favor King of Crimea slightly, but I'll say it's like a 52-48 matchup. It's very close. And then PokeArt versus Epic Boost. They both played pretty bad last week, and I don't have a lot of faith in either of these teams to like really show, or like either of these players to really show up. But I'll favor Epic Boost slightly because I do think Plaz has a better team support, and also that I've heard that PokeArt hasn't really been accepting the help that MJ and Ziri have been trying to give him. So I'll favor Epic Boost slightly, 55-45 here. 100% GXC versus Ziri. I think it is interesting that they decided to slot their, in my opinion, their best player against Ziri here. I think it's kind of interesting because Ziri is definitely a favorite in this match. I think it's actually 70-30, even though I believe 100% GXC to be one of the best players, like overall. I think Ziri is the like absolute pinnacle here. He is actually like a very good player for PU. So I believe he is not going to drop a game here, and I'm going to be favoring a 70-30 Ziri here, even though I believe 100% GXC is a good player. I just think Ziri is like on a different level when it comes to PU. And he did show it last week with a very solid win. It was 1-0, but if you actually look at the match, Ziri was under control for most of the game. Shoot versus the Amuse. I wasn't impressed by the Amuse's play last week, and I don't really have any reason to believe that he's going to improve very much. So Shoot, having taken down Serene Grace, I will say I will favor him here. 70-30, I would say. Boyne versus SMB. SMB won last week, and I have no reason to believe that he is not going to win this week. SMB is going to win this 90-10. I believe he is probably not going to drop a game until playoffs, at the very least. And then moving on, Weaviles versus Swampert. Oh, by the way, this is 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, so I'm predicting 4-4 tie, but I guess the key ones to watch out for are NU, RU, and well, okay, mainly NU and RU I think are going to be the highlight matches or not highlight, but the matches that really determine the outcome of the series. And I think Arsenal versus King of Crimea will be a highlight match. None of the other ones really and 100% GXC versus Ziri will be a highlight game, although I still think this is not very close. It's like relatively one-sided. Moving on to the Weaviles versus the Swamperts. Ninja Dog versus Pidgeot Mega. I'm going to be favoring Ninja Dog pretty heavily here. I didn't see anything impressive from Pidgeot Mega. He lost a matchup versus Dan Demand where I don't think the teams were that impressive and he didn't play very well. So I just think Ninja Dog, as an overall player, is going to outclass him. And so I think Ninja Dog will take this 70-30. Chaitanya versus Halamon. I think Chaitanya played very cleanly last week, and I think that he's going to take this very cleanly as well. 70-30 Chaitanya, maybe even higher, honestly. Real Surfy Teen versus Kather. Kather played very solid last week, and I have no reason really to doubt him this week, so I will favor him. Also 70-30. The Welshfall versus LKPKD. I don't even think this is going to be a match. It's going to be 95-5. The Welsh Wall. He just needs to prepare for like cheese, like Barbicle and Light Noon and stuff like, and he's not gonna lose. I don't think he's going to be able to play like solid balance very well, and or like LK PKD won't be able to play like solid balance very well, or like have any real chance. He's going like I can predict basically the team. Like he's probably gonna bring like um, Electrode, Barbicle, Linoon, like something like that. Um, so as long as the Lushwell is prepared and doesn't auto lose to that kind of stuff, then he's gonna win. Petri Clouds versus OK132. Um, that's a sub, right? I believe for this Swampbirds. Um, yeah, I believe so. Um, yeah, okay. So I believe PJ Clouds will probably win. I don't really know who the sub is, but PJ Clouds did play solid last week, so I have no real reason to doubt him. And then Omnis Draco will be favored here in the PU match. He didn't win last week, but he did play against Ziri, and I do think Omnis Draco is one of the best PU players in this tournament. So I do have faith in him to take this one. And I believe Serena Grace should bounce back as well. So I don't have any a big reason to doubt him, but it will maybe come down to motivation if Serena Grace really cares about BLT. But he should be able to pick up a win here. And this game already happened actually. TTTX already won. Although I would have favored him anyway. And with that, it was Ninja Dog 1, 2, 3, 4. So I guess I'm also predicting a tie here because yeah. So I predict the Weavals to take Ubers, OU, NU, and LC, and then the Swampers to take UU, RU, PU, and doubles. Well, they already took doubles. So I guess like the swing matchups in this one will come down to maybe like I'm not too sure, maybe like UU and LC, but I feel like maybe Ubers. I feel like every single matchup is pretty one-sided in this one. I don't really see any highlight matches, and I don't really see anything that like the favorite player will like drop the game. Um, it'll require like either luck or like insane team preparation for it to happen, in my opinion. Moving on to the let's talk about this one first. I'll talk about my matchups at the end, or like my team's matchups at the end. Jaren versus Terracotta. Although Jaren did beat Reggie last week, I don't really have a lot of faith in him to beat Terracotta. Reggie is more of a rusty player, and I think that Terracotta is going to be able to bounce back and take a pretty easy victory here. I favored Terracotta here 75-25. Maroon versus Frisoeva. This is definitely the highlight match of this week. Um, I guess Friso is really trying to match up to like take out the best player on their team or like one of their top players in OU this week. So I believe Friso is better than Maroon, but it'll be interesting because this is definitely a highlight matchup. I think Friso's favorite here is 60-40, but that's also a little bit of my bias towards like the Tours Room players. So we'll see how it goes, but I do favor Friso slightly. Mikav is now not in LC and instead in UU. I don't know that much as to why. Um, I would say this one will also be a very close match, Mikav versus Spitfire Arcanine. I don't think Spitfire Arcanine played very well versus me last week, and I don't have a lot of faith in him either. But I don't have a lot of faith in Mikav's Yu-Gi-Oh! So I'm not too sure where this is going to end up going. So I'll say 50-50 now, but I'm not sure. P-Toad versus Lugia Numer. Neither of these players looked very good in their first week. I think that Lugia Numer only won because Tom Yugen / Harley like hard choked their game. I guess I'll slightly favor Lugia Numer because he did play better than Pito did. I'm favoring him and NU. There's not really a big reason as to why I don't really feel like there's any explanation I need to make here. Ham is definitely better, probably 80-20 here. and it's hard really to predict against him in basically any slot he fits into. Skip Can versus Yoshi 972. Um, I'm gonna favor Skip Can here. He won last week, and Yoshi 972 didn't play very well against Ronman. In fact, he played pretty bad against Ronman, so favoring Skip Can here. London versus Richard Pepper. I think this is very easily London favored, like 70-30, 60 or 80-20 maybe even. London is a top LC player and Richard Pepper is not. So not much else to say there. And then Shadow Monster versus Carolina. Um, I'm kind of questioning how the restaurants kind of shuffled their roster because it ended with like a few kind of a little bit better improvements and then like a few pretty big pretty big like drop offs. Blanking right now. But I definitely favor Shadow Monster here, even though he did get a little bit lucky in beating Cheese. I think this is one of the players that I kind of like was talking about earlier that I wanted to see more of, with people who are kind of like rising up. I think he played pretty solid versus Cheese, even though he was aided a little bit by luck. So I'm going to favor him pretty heavily over Carolina here, 70-30 if not better. And then finally our matchups. So I'll talk about my actual matchup last. So Mysterious M versus Shredrodius. Mysterious M is definitely a better player in my opinion. And then Dennis the Menace versus Oras Mega. Um, Oras Mega had a pretty good showing last week, but Dennis definitely has more competitive experience and he has the tools to win this. So it will be a lot dependent on this match. This is one of the matches that it's important for us to win because I think like going into this week, I think the Snorlaxes definitely have a pretty high expectation on them to win and do well. And I feel like as of right now, we are not meeting those expectations. So we need to be doing better. Harley versus Abyssal Ruins. Keeping it icing is definitely a more storied player. I think he's also a better player as of right now. But if Harley or Tom Bugan kind of picks it up, we do have a good amount of support. So, you know, he could take this match. I'm not saying it's out of the realm of possibility, but it's definitely in keeping it Icy's favor. Civicon versus Principal Tacos already happened. Civicon didn't play super well. I I think there's like a few issues, but I don't really want to get into kind of internal kind of stuff. But that already happened. Ronman versus X Skelly. Uh, Hopefully Ronman. Well, we do have the PU support in the past, but I haven't seen a ton from Ronman because last game he won strictly based on matchup. So it'll be important for him to have a repeat showing to really prove that he can play at the like at a higher level. Sanjay is definitely favorite versus Jack in my box, and same with Cheese versus, well, Cheese versus Havens is like kind of more of a closer matchup, I should say. Similar to Dennis the Menace versus Oras Mega, both of Cheese definitely has the tools to beat Havens, but he definitely has to play better and still like show up because Havens is still a good player, and he proved that last week. And then myself versus Reggie, I'm definitely in the favored position here, especially after Reggie's poor showing last week. Um, or I should say mediocre showing last week. He really only lost on one turn, but I think it's going to be interesting to see basically how this series turns out because in theory we are probably going to like tie or something if nobody on our team really shows up from the like quote unquote unfavored positions. And that would be a huge disappointment if we lose or tie this week, or if we lose this week and it wouldn't make me really happy to tie this week to just be going into week 3 with only 2 ties with such a good roster. I feel like we have a higher potential than that, but obviously it's not that simple, right? There's like a lot of different factors that go into playing a Pokemon match. So you know that's it's just how it goes, I guess. So I'm sorry if I was like a little bit negative in this video. I just felt like there's been a lot of things that for BLT as like such a big event that's always, you know, such a community bringer together. Sorry, that didn't make any sense. Such a big community event that I kind of really always look forward to it when I like every year. And this year for BLT, I just feel like there's maybe a little bit something missing this year, and I think that we can kind of, it's not done yet, so we can still make BLT a great experience for everybody. It just, like, the first few weeks have been kind of slow, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. And um, with that said, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and if you did, then leave a like or subscribe or whatever. And if you didn't, then I'm not sure why you're still watching. And then I'll see you guys next time for another BLT um, video, and that will probably be next week for another recap and predictions video. So thank you guys for watching, and I hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you guys next time.